Going to the UK now, Reform UK is not just building momentum, but it's reached a significant milestone. The party now has more members than the Tories. According to a digital counter on the party's website, Reform UK has reached more than 131,000 members. Here is Nigel Farage.
This is an historic moment when the newest party in British politics overtakes the oldest existing political party in the world. Something is happening. So, of course, I'm delighted.
Yeah, Reform has certainly been climbing in popularity since the general election. The opinion polls have suggested that Nigel Farage has become one of the most popular politicians in the country. He frequently scores highly on the proportion of people who have a favourable opinion of him. Of course, there are some that don't like him, but Nigel Farage really appears to have the momentum behind this. Of course, we've seen he's got the support of people like Elon Musk, Nick Candy. And it also, I think there's a Trump effect happening now, which could also be sweeping the UK. But it also comes, Freya, after more than 2 million people signed a petition calling for another election just because Keir Starmer has been so hopeless.
Yeah, look, I mean, the thing is, right, Labor in the UK is not popular. They actually got a lower vote in the last election than they did the previous time under Jeremy Corbyn. They are not a popular government, and their first couple months in government has been a disaster on a whole range of fronts. So, I mean, the opposition is having a good run here. I think the really interesting dilemma that the Tories will face is how they navigate this tension with Reform. Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Tories, was calling out Nigel Farage for apparently faking the number of members. And then they decided to put up a live tracker, and there were all these debates between computer scientists about whether you can actually tell whether it's real or not. And so I think the growing division and kind of just resentment between the two parties is going to make it very challenging for the Tories to recover, because with the first past the post system, Reform will essentially just block them from ever getting into government again. And so I don't know how they're going to navigate that. And I think Kemi Badenoch has a lot of work to do in uniting the Tory party, in coming up with a new, actually conservative, values-based identity for the party. And this really is, and it should be a lesson to the Liberal Party and every centre-right party around the Western world. If you abandon your values and you compromise too much and you are just incompetent, you will suffer.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I also think that, the Tories are really going to struggle here. And Nigel Farage, he's saying he's, the Reform UK, it's an option.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Again, and, what a stupid response to sort of quibble about the numbers and say, I don't know how they go, just how, firstly, it gets everybody talking about it. So everyone is now talking about whether Reform UK is more popular than the Tories. And of course, it's kind of like saying, it's kind of like someone runs over your dog, right? And you say, someone says, hey, you ran over my dog at 6 o'clock. And you say, oh, no, it wasn't at 6 o'clock. You're kind of missing the main point. It was at 5:59. It doesn't matter. The dog is dead, right? So the Conservative Party quibbling about how they tallied the numbers. Well, it doesn't really matter, mate. The point is your party's on the verge of extinction. So I wouldn't bother asking computer experts on Twitter whether these numbers are real. So the lesson in Trump, in absolutely everything we've seen throughout the 21st century so far, and what a ride it's been, is that electorates are much more volatile than they have ever been, probably since the mid-war period, when it basically came down to fascists versus communists. And, spoiler alert, that was not a very stable time. It did not end well. Electorates are basically going to reward whoever is perceived to have, or who actually has the common touch, who can communicate with normal, everyday people. And again, they're not going to reward, not harping on, but they're not going to reward people saying, oh, I'm smarter than you, or I'm an expert, or whatever. But they're going to reward people who they instinctively and emotionally identify with, like Donald Trump, like Nigel Farage. And even though we've had kind of centrist revolutions in France and Canada with those francophilic bloody Quebecois, oh God, I hate the French, but Trudeau and Macron.
You brought up the French.
But again, we've seen how quickly the electorate has turned against them when they were perceived as not being a fresh new start that would fix everything, but as being perceived as sort of elite and out of touch. So I think any perceptions of elitism, any sort of woke crap that people go on with that isn't what people are talking about at their kitchen tables, anything that shows that you are out of touch or a bit wanky or a bit fancy, you are gone.
Done. Old news, not in 2024 or 2025.